Hi, this is Joe Green, head pastor of St. Paul Missionary Baptist Church in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, also the founder of the 2019 movement. And I want to share a couple of thoughts with you. We had a great conversation yesterday with Dr. Shelby Steele. Shelby Steele is a fellow from Stanford University's Hoover Institute. Been around for a long time doing some great work in regards to race relations, critical race theory. He has a documentary film that you can get. I watched it on Amazon Prime. It's called Who Killed Michael Brown, or What Killed Michael Brown. I'm sorry. I would encourage you to watch it if you really. I would encourage you to watch it. Period. It's a great documentary film. It gives a lot of great information. And the reason I think the conversations like we had yesterday, and if you subscribe to my YouTube channel, subscribe, please share and like, if you will. Great content. The conversation is listed on my YouTube channel, my Facebook page. We streamed it live, but I put it out there. And I would encourage you to watch it and really listen if you haven't listened to it already. One of the things that's so critical for us in this time, in this hour, is that we don't allow emotions to skew our perception on what's happening. And I'm really kind of prayerfully believing that people are waking up. There's the trial of Darren Chauvin, who was involved in the death of George Floyd. That whole incident that really set things off last year. Riots all over the country, protests, nonviolent nonviolent protests as well as violent protests all over the country. And so that court case is coming up, and I'm somewhat concerned that it will be used to refan the flames of unrest in this country. And primarily because a lot of people, they don't look at things from a logical, factual perspective. They allow their emotions to shape them. The optics of the George Floyd situation was really bad. The optics, no matter, even if you look at the facts or not, the optics were really bad. What do I mean by that? They kept showing you this visual of these police officers kneeling on this man, and this man was screaming, I want my mother, I can't breathe, and all those type of things. It looks bad. No matter what the details are, we all acknowledge as human beings that looks bad, right? But what we have to do is we got to go beyond that. We got to look at the facts. We have to look at things from a logical perspective, because what happens is over and over again, unresolved trauma helps to manipulate and control people and bridge the gap to past experiences. So if you've ever had some bad experiences that you've been traumatized, especially in regards to you felt like you've been mistreated because of your ethnicity, your race, the color of your skin, or whatever the case may be, a lot of times that leaves deep fissures in us. It traumatizes us. And when those traumas are left unresolved, the enemy can very easily bridge the gap to those past pains. So you see something happens now in 2021, if you have unresolved trauma, it can bridge the gap back to that. Let me give an example. If a woman had been abused, mistreated, sexually assaulted years ago, and she's never dealt with that pain and that trauma, amen, K-Love, thank you. Absolutely. We are no longer victims. Absolutely. I'm with you 100%. So we're talking about trauma and how unresolved trauma is a tool of manipulation. So if a woman was abused or assaulted or anything in her past and she hasn't dealt with that trauma, then anytime she comes up to in a situation that invokes the same or similar emotions, she can be re-victimized. As a Black person, I had been mistreated. We all have experienced racial prejudice or bias or whatever the case may be. And because of the pain that can leave sometimes, if I hadn't dealt with it, then anytime I come into a situation that invokes similar feelings, I could be re-victimized or traumatized. And that's what's happening, I think, to Black America, which is why it's being used. The media is doing a great job of trying to re-victimize and re-traumatize us. So I want to go over a couple of things and talk about some of the ideologies. See, one of the things that I try to do, if you ever listen to my talks or my messages, that I go to, instead of, see, a lot of times what we do is we use experiences based on what we have right now, right? What we see right now. Or a lot of times we're trying to figure things out based on current information. And what I mean by current information, um, we go by what we see or feel or something of recent history, right? But here's what I need you to understand. I need you to understand that just wanted to comment, respond to your comment. Very, very, very good comment. What you have to understand, in order to really understand what's going on, you have to go beyond recent history. Because if you don't understand the foundation, if you don't understand the past history, you know, a lot of times as African Americans, we're going back 50 or 60 years in what we understand. But you have to realize that the ideologies that we're dealing with are centuries old. So you have to go beyond that. But anyway, let me talk to you about a couple of things in regards to victimhood. See, victimhood or creating an environment that continually leaves you as a victim is a form of manipulation. So a lot of the systems right now in Black America, what we're doing, a lot of our protests, and let me say real quick, let me give you a little background. So you had leaders after slavery, you had the abolitionist movement, you had Frederick Douglass, who was an abolitionist, you had other leaders in the Black community after the abolishment of slavery, and most of them taught self-empowerment. So you had people like Marcus Garvey, you had people like George Washington Carver, who started Tuskegee Institute. You know, Marcus Garvey was a Pan-Africanism, and he had this Back to Africa movement and self-empowerment movement. Frederick Douglass, and I'm going to share a couple of his quotes as well. He was all about self-empowerment, education, strengthening yourself, strengthening your character, and all those type of things, right? But then you had people like W.E.B. Du Bois. See, W.E.B. Du Bois, who was a social psychologist, a sociologist, I forgot his exact title. He really did a grave disservice to African Americans. He was one of the original members of the NAACP, which was not founded by Black people, but he was one of the original members. And he taught desegregation. He taught basically for the Black people to, you know, kind of be absolved into the larger society, right? And he believed in protesting. They taught protests. And he also was a Marxist. W.E.B. Du Bois eventually renounced his American citizenship. I think he moved to Russia or someplace like that. But anyway, he was a socialist. He was a Marxist. And so Marxism has a different ideology than the ideology I think that is important for us as African Americans. And I'm going to explain that. But anyway, here's the problem with they always focus on protesting. They always focus on handouts and entitlement. W.E.B. Du Bois was also a eugenicist, and he gave money to Margaret Sanger because he believed the talented 10th, and that there were certain people that were better than others. And so anyway, let me get to what I'm getting to. So W.E.B. Du Bois, he promoted this idea that Black people should protest. They should ask for white America to improve their situation or to help them out, right? As opposed to the ones who were self-empowering. So there's the system that's set up right now that keeps us as victims, even the protests around the country that we're always asking the larger white society, the dominant white society, to come in and fix the problems of the Black community. If you think about the protests like Colin Kaepernick and some of these athletes that are protesting things, they're showing signs of protest. And you have to understand that the ideology behind this W.E.B. Du Bois, it's known as social Darwinism, and I'm going to share what that means. But I need to deal with the ideology first. So you have people like Colin Kaepernick, you have LeBron James, these so-called social activists, social justice warriors. But think about what they're trying to do. Colin Kaepernick, at one point in time, he had an NFL contract that was worth over $100 million with all the incentives and everything. He was a quarterback that led his team to the Super Bowl and almost won a Super Bowl, right? He had a huge platform. He had, he was one of the most popular players in the league for a certain period of time. And so what is the message that he sent when he began to protest? He was protesting for someone outside of our community to fix our community, right? He said that he was talking about, he said, police mistreatment of Black people and inequality and those type of things. But in essence, what he was doing is asking people from outside of the community to fix our problems, right? If you are a athlete, a famous athlete, you have a platform, you have the resources, right? Especially if you think about all the black NFL players. The NFL is made up of about 70% black people. Think about how many millions and millions of dollars of resources they have and how much access, excuse me, they have resources, they have a platform, right? And they have a lot of um, visibility, and they have all the tools necessary to fix the communities that they come from. You have these owners of NFL teams and professional franchises. They're paying millions of dollars to these athletes every year, and in turn, these athletes are telling everyone how unfair and racist the world is, the country is, and how someone should do something to help our community. Right? That's the wrong mindset. That's the opposite of what we should be focusing on. And so this whole idea of what's known as social Darwinism is an extension of Darwinism, specifically a sociological theory that socio-cultural advance is the product of intergroup conflict and competition, and the socially elite classes, such as those possess wealth and power, possess biological superiority in the struggle for existence. So even our welfare system, our social programs are based on social Darwinism. LBJ and the Great Society. LBJ was a Marxist. The Great Society and the war on poverty, the welfare system was set up originally not to help people, but to cause government dependency. Because this mindset of social Darwinism is that people that are poor and the lower classes of people can never evolve beyond their situation. And so what they do is they believe that the government or someone outside, maybe the white America or the government or someone, is supposed to come in and fix our problems. Even when you're asking for a higher minimum wage, you're asking for someone to help me to pay for my family, as opposed to the mindset of a Marcus Garvey or George Washington Carver or Frederick Douglass, that they simply wanted to leave us alone so that we can empower ourselves and build our own community. George Washington Carver, that started Tuskegee Institute, actually was also, it wasn't just a college or a university of higher learning. It was also they taught trades, right? It was a school that taught like carpentry and different things like that, right? So that if you learn a trade, you can go out a bricklayer, a carpenter, or a contractor, or whatever the case may be. You can have your own business, and therefore you won't need people to pay you a higher minimum wage, because you can pay your own minimum wage, right? So that was the ideology behind these type of people. George Washington Carver also talked against those race hustlers, he called them, or race baiters, that always wanted to fan the flames of racial injustice, but they did it as a way to profit off of it. And so you had this type of mindset, the social Darwinism, that actually is saying that black people are in a situation because of white America and they can't get out on their own, that white America has to fix it, or the nation owes us something that we have to be able to fix, that they have to fix our problems for us. And that's opposite and contrary to what I believe is our best approach. Now, let me talk a little bit about a couple of people that I mentioned. Frederick Douglass, who was born in February of 1817, and he lived to 1895. He was an American social reformer, abolitionist, orator, writer. Now, these are the ideologies that are important to Black America for us to understand historically what they believe, because I believe that their philosophy and their ideology is still something that we can benefit from, as opposed to this whole victim mindset that says that we're in the position that we're in because of white America and because of racism and systematic racism. And the only way to fix it is for the system to help us, the government to help us. White America owes us something and they got to give it to us so that we can be okay, right? That's contrary to the ideology that these great Black leaders believed in. And the philosophy is contrary to being able to build a strong community. So here's what Frederick Douglass says. Again, Frederick Douglass lived from 1817 to 1895. Now, granted, slavery wasn't abolished until 1865, right? You still had Jim Crow. You still had a lot of segregation and racist laws up until the 1960s with the Civil Rights Movement. But Frederick Douglass wasn't asking for a handout. He wasn't asking for white America to help us. He wasn't saying you guys owe us because of slavery. Listen what Frederick Douglass says. Everybody has asked the question, what shall we do with the Negro? I have but one answer from the beginning. Do nothing with us. Your doing with us has already played the mischief with us. Do nothing with us. If the apples will not remain on the tree of their own strength, if they are worm-eaten at the core, if they are already ripe and disposed to fall, let them fall. I am not for tying or fastening them on the tree in any way, except by nature's plan. And if they will not stay there, let them fall. And if the Negro, this is Frederick Douglass, if the Negro cannot stand on his own legs, let him fall also. All I ask is give him a chance to stand on his own legs and let him alone. So that was the mindset of these great leaders of the day. Frederick Douglass, who lived through slavery, he was a former slave who got his freedom and became an abolitionist, an author, a very educated statesman. He says, don't do anything with us. He says, all I ask is give the Negro a chance to stand on his own legs, leave him alone, right? Marcus Garvey, great leader and a black great leader. He lived, he was born in 1887 and he died in 1940. His organization was the Universal Negro Improvement Association, and it represented the largest mass movement in African American history. He also established the Negro Factories Corporation and the Black Star Line to encourage Black economic independence. Black economic independence. Garvey was responsible for putting forward ideas that helped to advance the political consciousness of Blacks worldwide. He died in June 1940. In 1964, his remains were taken to Jamaica, where he was declared the country's first national hero. Here's what Marcus Garvey, here's a couple of quotes from Marcus Garvey. Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. He was about personal responsibility, personal empowerment. Another quote, Marcus Garvey, you at this time can only be destroyed by yourselves from within and not from without. You have reached the point where the victory is to be won from within and can only be lost from within. Again, he was saying that outside factors should not dictate to you your life, that it's all internal. You win from within, he says. And here's another thing, and I'm going to bring this to a close. It's not going to be that long of a video. So most of the people are familiar with the fact, as I mentioned, 1965, slavery was abolished. 1965 and subsequent years, you had the Jim Crow South, where they had discriminatory laws. You know, you had the whole thing in the South where they could have a sign that says no blacks allowed. They had water fountains for whites only. They had restaurants where black people weren't allowed to eat in, right? That's from 1865 up until the 1964 Civil Rights Bill, right? So black people began to thrive. They began to do well. They began to become independent on their own without any outside help, right? So then you had LBJ, who is from Texas, becomes president. He starts what's called the War on Poverty, right? Now, the War on Poverty, of course, which I said to you earlier, is based on social Darwinism. And social Darwinism is the idea that people that are poor or in lower realms of society, that they are genetically inferior. And because of that, they set up a system that doesn't help to empower you, but it just gives you a handout and causes dependency. So LBJ said that, we had to do something for the black people because of their political power now. And I'm paraphrasing, not enough to make a difference, but to keep them dependent on the Democrat Party, which is based on social Darwinism. They believed that blacks were inferior and that they could never strive on their own, right? That's in contrast to these two great men that I mentioned, Marcus Garvey and Frederick Douglass, who Marcus Garvey said, emancipate yourselves. Frederick Douglass says, I don't want you to do anything with Negroes. Just leave us alone. Let us stand on our own 2 feet, right? So during the time of LBJ, you had this advisor by the name of Daniel Patrick Moynihan, and he lived from 1927 to 2003. He was a 4-term U.S. Senator, ambassador, administration official, and an academiologist, or he was an academic. Moynihan served in the cabinets or sub-cabinets of President JFK, Lyndon Johnson, Richard Nixon, and then Gerald Ford. He was a Democratic senator from 1977 to 2001, right? The Moynihan report generated considerable controversy. He wrote a report about the war on poverty and the condition of the black family. Now, again, we've already mentioned that Frederick Douglass, Marcus Garvey, and these other, George Washington Carver, Booker T. Washington, I'm sorry. all believed in self-sufficiency, education, equipping ourselves, as opposed to the other people who believed that they wanted to give handouts to the black people to keep them dependent, right? Keep them down and out. So Moynihan wrote a report during the time of the War on Poverty and the Civil Rights Bill. And he got a lot of controversy because he wrote to Lyndon Johnson. Moynihan argued that without access to jobs and the means to contribute meaningful support to a family, black men would become systematically alienated from their roles as husbands and fathers, which would cause rates of divorce, child abandonment, and out of wedlock births to skyrocket in the black community. Now, you got to realize how important it is what he was saying. This report that was written in the 1960s. So from the time of slavery all the way up to the 1960s, at the highest, the black out of wedlock pregnancy was 22%. Now in the 2000s, this is 2021, it is estimated that is well over 70%, probably 74% of all black births are out of wedlock. The abortion rate in places like New York City and other places, there's more black babies that are aborted than born. And so we see this clear breakdown of the family that has happened, not from slavery, but from in the last 50 to 60 years, there has been the decline. And it is because of this social Darwinistic system of handouts and social programs that doesn't help the community. It breaks the community down. Let me give you some other quotes to help you. Moynihan wrote, the steady expansion of welfare programs can be taken as a measure of a steady disintegration of the Negro family structure over the past generations in the United States. Daniel Patrick Moynihan. Now, here's what I'm saying, and I've said this, and other people like me have said this. It is not racism. It is not poverty. It's not those things that has caused the destruction of the black community. It is the breakdown of the family and the lack of faith, the breakdown of faith. So the two main things that were meant to strengthen our community and has sustained us through slavery and Jim Crow and all the other things were family and faith, right? So our faith in God that helps to define our family, helps to define our culture. Let's say that again. Your faith defines your family and defines your culture. If you have a strong faith in family, you'll have a strong culture, which has strong individuals. And if you have strong individuals, it is racism proof. It is racism proof, right? Especially when you have laws on the books that protect you from racial discrimination. So here's what Moynihan said. The central conservative truth is that culture, not politics, that determines the success of a society. The central liberal truth is that politics can change a culture and save it from itself. Politics can't save a culture. We don't need laws to help to redefine marriage, redefine culture, redefine faith, redefine morality. We need laws to protect and defend faith and family. If you defend faith and family, it will be a strong culture, and the strong culture will help to make strong individuals and successful communities and families. Daniel Patrick Moynihan also said, in too many cases, if our government had set out determined to destroy the family, it couldn't have done greater damage than some of what we see today. This was from the 60s till now. We see a weakened family unit. Government cannot provide values to persons who have none or have lost those they had. It cannot provide inner peace. It can provide outlets for moral energies, but it cannot create those energies. And so I'm here to say to you that we have to stop focusing and becoming victims. We have to start focusing on reestablishing families, faith, and culture, because those are the key ingredients to any successful society. And when you have those strong ones intact, then no outside force can destroy you. Like I said, Marcus Garvey says, you at this time can only be destroyed by yourselves from within and not from without. You have reached the point where the victory is to be won from within and can only be lost from within, not from without. This has been Joe Green. Until next time, peace and blessings to you. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Please share the videos, and please like it if you see some benefit to what is being said. Be blessed.